Thank you. The Senate Transportation Committee will come to order. Staff, could you call the roll, please? Thank you, sir. All right. Welcome to our first meeting of the Senate Transportation Committee. And if we could I have the clerks and staff from DLS introduce themselves, starting with you, Eric?
I'm Eric Bingham with Senate Committee Operations.
Thank you.
I'm David Hessler, also with Senate Committee Operations.
And Lisa?
And I'm Lisa Wallmeyer with Division of Legislative Services.
Thank you, Lisa. And if we could go around the room and starting with Senator Favola and working our way around, could you introduce yourself to the public?
Sure. Hi, I'm Senator Barbara Favola. I represent portions of Northern Virginia, Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun, and I'm delighted to be here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Steve Newman from the 23rd District, which is around Lynchburg in the northern parts of the Roanoke Valley.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Bill D. Steff, Senator Bill D. Steff from Virginia Beach.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'm Mark Peake, State Senate 22nd District from Lynchburg and through the heart of Virginia all the way to Goochland.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. It's an honor to serve with you as the chairman of the committee once again. My name is Bill Stanley. I'm the new guy here, just got appointed this week, so it's a real pleasure to be on a committee I've wanted to be on for a long time.
Very good. And he's a clean energy guy. Walked all the way here to session from Franklin County. Bill, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Senator John Cosgrove from the 14th Senate District. I represent 7 localities, including Virginia Beach up to the city of Franklin.
Thank you.
I'm Mark Obenchain, Senator from Lacey Spring, Virginia, Shenandoah Valley, the gentle fold in the palm of God's hand, and just glad to have somebody junior to me here on the committee now.
Thank you.
I'm Senator Jennifer McClellan from the 9th District, which we are in, so welcome. And it's also Eastern Henrico, all of Charles City County, and the town of Ashland and Hanover.
I'm Eben, 30th District, parts of Alexandria, South Arlington, and Fairfax County, home to Reagan National Airport, water taxis, interstates, hot lanes, and bike paths.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeremy McPike, 29th Senate District, representing parts of Woodbridge, Dale City, Manassas, and Manassas Park. Thank you.
But headquartered in the fair city of Chesapeake. So thank you very, very much. We have a member who's requested to go first here because of a child care issue coming up. Senator Morrissey, are you with us? Please please take the podium and please tell us while we have Senate Bill. Excuse me one moment here. 1253. Thank you. Go ahead.
Known as the Bicycle Safety Act. In a moment, I'm going to express and explain the 3 points that it seeks to accomplish. But by way of some background information, probably not surprising to anyone here, 2020 has seen a bicycle boom during the COVID-19 pandemic. The bike industry has experienced a 120% increase in sales and shops, and from the Capitol Trail to Ashland Trail, people are biking everywhere. With it we have seen, again, not surprisingly, an increase in accidents. In Virginia, 12 to 15 people a year die from riding a bike each year in traffic, and 700 to 850 are injured. This Bicycle Safety Act seeks to reduce the number of deaths and injured folks. So with that explanation, let me just tell you what it does. There are three main points. Number one, the bill permits operators of bicycles to treat a stop sign more as a yield sign, and that is set forth in line 25. Number two, the bill requires the driver of a motor vehicle to change lanes when overtaking a bicyclist when the lane is not wide enough to allow for 3 feet of separation between the car overtaking the bicyclist and the bicyclist. Thirdly, the bill removes the limitations on riding bicycles and certain other vehicles two abreast. With the latter, that might be counterintuitive that you don't want to ride two abreast. The reason for this, and there is empirical evidence from other states, is that if they're riding two abreast and another car seeks to overtake those bicyclists, there's more room and less distance between the individual bicyclists that will make it a safer passage. So I know we have at least two people in the queue to speak, Mr. Chairman, but I'll pause now and answer any questions that you or any of your members have.
Thank you, Senator Morrissey. I do have a couple of questions. When you're talking about having to change lanes to make the passage to make it safer for the bicyclists, would this authorize the vehicle to go across a double yellow line to make that pass?
It doesn't address double yellow line in there, but it's on lines 21. That language was added, and it simply says this. And I would assume that it probably is. It includes it doesn't express it, but I would think that it would prohibit the car from going over that double yellow line because you can't do that anyway. The original goal of the legislation was to pass it and allow for 3 feet. Now it says if there's not enough room in the lane to give 3 feet difference between the cyclist and the car, you can go into the other lane, but I would say that it would not allow them to violate the law and pass on a double yellow line.
Okay, we can check on that one. So this would be primarily on a smaller tertiary kind of road where it is narrower than a two-lane road that's marked would be. And so okay, and the second thing is on the issue of treating a stop sign as a yield sign. Could you go into what the safety factor is there in not having to stop and look in all directions?
Sure, certainly. And I know there are some experts that are queued up that will do a more articulate job than I will, but with regard to, this is known as a safety stop. It's a yield, but they call it a safety stop. And often right now, drivers and bicyclists disregard the signs entirely. Also, repetitive four-way stop signs sometimes are counterproductive for cyclists. This safety stop, which is a yield and not a stop, requires the bicyclist to yield away at a stop sign without requiring them to come to a complete stop. This is a common practice used among bicyclists right now, and according to the experts, some of whom will testify, it puts the emphasis on what matters the most, avoiding a collision.
Thank you, Senator Morrissey. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, back here.
Senator Obenshain?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask Senator Morrissey, the double yellow line issue does concern me. I think we kind of need an answer to that, especially if you're going to allow two cyclists to ride side by side. There are a lot of rural roads, and frankly, if you take Three Chop Road in Richmond, for example, and have two people riding side by side along there, you're going to have cars backed up for a long way if they're not able to pass those bicycles. It's going to cause significant problems. In my experience, some anger by those motorists, which has the ability or likelihood of causing even more dangerous behavior. I don't know whether maybe somebody listening has an answer to that question.
I believe the state police will be on the call as well as DMV, and after our questions here, we can have them address that. Anyone else on the panel? Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Morrissey, I see on lines 47 of the PDF file, you've stricken the language about riding to abreast shall not impede normal reasonable traffic by moving in a single line. Why are you taking that out?
Well, here's the reason. By removing the limitations on bicyclists riding two abreast, it accomplishes the following. There is less, or there's more room for the car that passes the two bicyclists that are abreast because they are now compact as opposed to spread out to re-enter the lane and get in front of them without striking a cyclist. There are some statistics from the League of American Bicyclists that the empirical evidence seems to support that if the bicyclists are two abreast, it's easier to pass them and then re-enter the lane without obstructing a cyclist. That's the best I can give.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
I thank you for the explanation, but it sure sounds counterintuitive to me.
I'm sorry, could you?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I just said, thank you for the explanation. It just seems to be counterintuitive.
Well, think of it this way, Senator Cosgrove. If you have one bicyclist here and another here, that car that is passing has a greater distance to get in front of the lead cyclist, as opposed to if both of them are together, compact with one another, it's easier to get in front of two bicyclists riding side by side than two bicyclists riding maybe 10, 15 feet apart. That's how it's been explained to me, and I did see this statistic when I was preparing for my remarks that the Delaware State Police found that 23% reduction in bicyclist injuries and crashes with cars when they had the folks, when they were able to pass two abreast.
All right, thank you.
Maybe we'll hear from people that know, although I'm a bicyclist and an enthusiast, people that know more than I do.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question to the patron. There was one question earlier indicating that traffic might back up, but lines 29 through 34 under 46.2905, would it not be true, as stated, I think in lines 32 at the end of that line, that bikes and other devices traveling less than a normal speed of traffic at the time shall move over when practical and safe to do so, thereby letting traffic continue to move freely at normal speeds?
If I heard the question correctly, it's would it not be true that if the bicyclist pulled over, it would allow for greater passage or easier passage? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes.
I would agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator McPike. I've also received word from the invisible authority on these things, from DLS, that the double line is still in force in law, and one may not cross it to comply with this law. Other questions from the committee? Anyone care to address the bill? If not, we operate on a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, I wasn't clear for me. You were asking for public comment or committee comment?
Yes, just let's get on with the folks who are in favor of the bill. Thank you, Senator Serval. Could you ask for who is here in favor of the bill and then call out their names, please?
If you are here to speak in favor of it, though, please raise your hand digitally in Zoom. Brantley Tyndall, I hope I pronounced that correctly. You may unmute and go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Brantley Tyndall, and I'm the president of Virginia Bicycling Federation. Thanks for your time today. I did want to give one quick clarification. I believe it's 46.2-804 that allows crossing the double yellow line in order to provide 3 feet of passing as the current law. And so we're seeking an additional requirement to change lanes to pass because many lanes are so narrow that you can't give that 3 feet without really giving the full wide berth. And on behalf of Virginia Bicycling Federation, we've done a lot of work to research this bill, to indicate some of those empirical claims that our patron, Mr. Morrissey, was so gracious to share. In Delaware, these 3 individual elements were passed at the same time in 2017, and they did a study. The Delaware State Police did a study of 30 months prior and 30 months post the bill taking effect and found 23% reduction in crashes at intersections, which is probably the most pertinent related to the safety stop component. And they found an 11% reduction in injuries for bicyclists overall, which indicates very much it correlates with what the League of American Bicyclists has found, that 45% of fatal bike crashes are related to improper passing by a motorist, and where 12 or 15 people every year are killed while riding a bike. We're talking about really saving several lives potentially every year by enacting the change lanes to pass. When you enact that change lanes to pass, it also benefits drivers because it allows them to treat bicyclists just like they treat anyone else they might pass. And by allowing that double or being able to ride 2 abreast, groups of cyclists, whether we're talking about a group ride in the country or families or history tours that happen really commonly in a lot of our urban areas, can be half as long, which means the passing maneuver is theoretically half as long to maneuver, and the exposure to oncoming traffic and the exposure to having to retake that lane is drastically reduced. So we've got a lot of statewide support for this bill with bike and other active organizations, and I know that I've got 2 other speakers here to talk about that today. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. Tyndall, could you repeat what you said about double yellow lines being that was already in code, that you could cross a double yellow line to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I believe it is 46.2-804, and I believe that was in 2015 that was enacted.
And could I ask counsel, could you respond to that?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, my understanding was that this would not allow somebody to go fully into the other lane, and so perhaps state police might be able to clarify that a little more fully.
I'm sorry, who?
State police, I believe they're on the line. They can probably clarify. My understanding was that this.
Senator Serval.
Thank you. I'm reading 46.2804, subsection 5 right now, and it says, whenever a highway is marked with a double traffic lines consisting of a solid line immediately adjacent to the broken line, no vehicle should be driven to the left of the line, except, number 2, in order to pass a pedestrian or a device moved by human power, including a bicycle, skateboard, or foot scooter.
So, in other words, that certainly crossing the double yellow line is incorporated into this bill.
If you're passing a bicycle.
If you're passing a bicyclist or a pedestrian or somebody on some kind of a non-motorized vehicle that's being run by human power, I guess Fred Flintstone's car, I guess you're talking about. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for the misinformation.
Okay, so do you agree with that, Ms. Wallmeyer, that would indeed be okay?
It sounds like it would be okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Who's next up, or who is in favor of the bill?
Ron Maxey, if you want to unmute and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I had raised my hand to help respond to the earlier question, but that's been answered. I was going to help y'all out with the double solid line question. I'll reserve my time to speak when the time's appropriate.
Okay. I think we have one other person.
Elizabeth Schlepper. Please go ahead.
Sure. Hello. Thank you for taking my comments today. My name is Liz Schlepper. I live in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm represented by Senator Sproul. I've worked with Senator DeSteph many times, and I appreciate that he's there in the audience right now. I've been cycling for, 30 years and, 3, 4, 5 times per week. And I've also mentored many riders, led bike rides, led beginner rides, help people, suit themselves up to ride, to be able to ride to work, be able
Ma'am,
to take.
could you get to the, we've got a busy docket here. Could you get to your
Sure.
reason for supporting the bill?
Sure. The reason I'm bringing up the mentoring is because many people, the number one complaint that people have who ride bikes is that cars pass too closely. What it does is it keeps people from going on a street that's 25 or 35 miles per hour simply because they're concerned that the car will come too close. And that really doesn't make a lot of sense in a place like Norfolk, where just about all the roads are 35 and under. And if there's sort of a reset in the idea that our roads are not just for the cars, but for those families, for those folks that are riding the bikes. And there's this idea that in order to pass them, they're going to need to be given sufficient space. That's why I'm supporting this bill.
Okay.
We call it getting buzzed. And I would say every ride that I do, there's one significant buzz that happens, one significant time that
Okay.
I'm.
Thank you very much. Captain Maxey, you wanted to weigh in. Could you open up Ron Maxey from the state police?
Whenever you're ready, Ron Maxey, you can go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman. What was that again? I'm going to reserve comment on my end for some concerns the state police has with the bill. I'm not sure if we're at that point yet, though.
Oh, okay. I know we had one gentleman defer, but you're Mr. Excuse me, Mr. Desjardins. You are in favor of the bill.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And could we now go to folks who are in opposition to the bill?
Would those in opposition please raise their hand in Zoom? Ron Maxey, you can go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Captain Ron Maxey, Virginia State Police. State Police has a concern with the portion of the bill in lines 25 through 26 with the cyclist being allowed to treat a stop sign as a yield sign. Is oftentimes the reason for there being a stop sign instead of a yield sign in a place at an intersection is a lack of visibility or increased accidents. This could be on the part of the individual with the right-of-way or on the part of the individual who's entering the roadway from the controlled intersection, or possibly by both. Allowing a cyclist to enter the intersection without properly stopping has the potential for deadly consequences. While these consequences may be reduced if the cyclist is merely making a right turn, the possibility of a crash increases greatly if that cyclist is proceeding straight across the intersection or if he's possibly making a left-hand turn through the intersection. We also do have some concerns with lines 47 through 50 of the bill with some of the language which is being removed, which eliminates the responsibility of the cyclist to participate in the safe passage of that vehicle. When they're riding two abreast, it removes language which requires them to ride in a single lane. If two cyclists were riding abreast, they could conceivably be one in the right lane, one in the left lane. If it's a 4-lane divided highway, at that point, it would block any motorist from being able to pass. We've already addressed previously in the code section 462804 that a motorist can pass on double solid lines. There's some concerns with that because obviously the Department of Transportation does studies to show where it is safe visibility wise. for vehicles to do that. However, the code does allow that. But anything that would increase motorists having to make aggressive moves like that could increase the possibility of a crash, as well as possible road rage situations. It removes the fact that they are not to impede the normal flow of reasonable traffic. And again, that's concerning because the motor or the cyclist could conceivably stay in these lanes for a considerable amount of time, again, increasing the road rage possibility.
Okay, thank you, Captain Maxey. Anything else from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, a question for State Police.
Senator Servell, question for Captain Maxey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Captain Maxey, I heard you talk about the State Police having concerns. We also heard, I believe, from some of the advocates that these changes have been studied and have been found to actually reduce collisions. And I was curious whether the State Police's positions were informed by any data or evidence, or whether it was just your all's opinion, being the enforcers of traffic laws and having to write tickets after collisions occur.
No, sir. I'd been in conversation with Mr. Brantley Tyndall, who's on the call today. I contacted Delaware State Police to actually speak with them regarding this, and there were some quotes by them in support of some of the actions that were taken. The information I got was this was a much larger plan with them, which focused a lot on bicycle lighting enforcement and more enforcement on bicyclist behavior than it was on motorists interacting around these bicycles. So it was far more than just these several items that decreased these accidents. It was a lot of overtime money that was put forward by the state to do these enforcement actions, especially around their beach communities. So according to Delaware State Police, this was a part of it, but it was part of an overall larger scheme of bicycle and motorist enforcement and education.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Senator Servell.
Thank you. So then it's correct to say that everything that you've testified to today isn't really based on any data or studies or analysis. It's just based on your opinion.
Well, it's follow up and actually speaking in regards to the studies that Mr. Tyndall had presented me to follow up on. Okay, it's based on that research and conversation.
Okay, thanks.
That's the extent.
Mr. Chairman.
Who was that?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, who do we have? Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, I'll make some very, very succinct and brief comments, unless there's another person who's in the queue to oppose.
No, I think we're
couple of things. This legislation, which has been promoted by the League of American Bicyclists, these three specific changes have been adopted in other states. This isn't any broader than any other states, and their conclusions is that traffic safety, bicyclist safety improves. The last point that I'm going to be making, and especially since we had some comments regarding riding two abreast, is this. I've already discussed that riders riding two abreast are more compact, therefore it takes the driver less time to pass them. But the other thing is this. Many families that are biking together, often the parent rides outside, on the outside, closer to the travel lane of their child, and gives the child more protection by doing that. So with that, I don't have any other points to make.
Thank you, Senator Morsi. Any other questions from the committee?
I move to report.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to report. Clerk, would you open the roll?
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Noes 4. The bill is on to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the courtesy of getting me out here.
I think next up we have Senator Stewart, who has four bills before us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. If I may, Mr. Chairman, start with Senate Bill 1144. And, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you this was a pretty draconian bill that I filed for a reason, and I'll give you a solution at the end, but if you'll just give me a minute. I have a gentleman business who owns property in my jurisdiction, in my district that I represent, and actually he used to live up in McLean, but he moved to Boca Raton. and he has an airplane, he has a hangar in Boca Raton, he pays taxes on his airplane in Boca Raton. He flies into Virginia a great deal, particularly into Stafford Airport. And so there came a time this summer where he got a bill from not the tax department yet, I guess it's the Department of Aviation first, and then the enforcement action goes to tax department. That essentially said he was going to have to pay $250,000 in taxes on this plane, for which he already pays much more than that in taxes in Florida. And so he contacted me, and I looked into this, and here's the way the law works in Virginia right now, which I believe is patently unfair. If you fly into Virginia 90 times a year, not even 90 times, could actually be 45 times a year, you are then subject to paying taxes on your aircraft to Virginia. And the reason I say it could be 45 days is because this particular person would fly in on an afternoon, he would meet with employees, he would take them out to dinner, he'd then the next day take care of business, and he'd fly out the next afternoon. They would charge him as being in Virginia for 2 days, when in fact he came in the evening, left the next afternoon, probably not even 24 hours, maybe 24 hours. And so the way the law currently is, it actually discourages businesses to do business in Virginia. And I don't think that's what we want to do. And so the bill I drafted, I'll be very frank with you, was designed to get everybody's attention because I was having a hard time getting people's attention on this issue. The administration has been great. Clark Mercer's been great. Aubrey Lane's been great in trying to work through this. But we've got to fix this because we don't want to discourage CEOs from coming to Virginia to do business, and that's what the tax policy does now. They can likely go anywhere else they want, but if they want to do business in Virginia, we want to do it. And so, in my mind, we need to change this policy to at least say, if you pay taxes in another jurisdiction, you don't have to pay them here. If your plane's here for more than half a year, 183 days versus 90 days, then you would have to pay taxes. But I wanted you all to have the story so you understand the story of what's happening. This is somebody who pays taxes and has a hangar in another state and wants to come to Virginia to do business and has significant business interests. And we don't want to discourage that because they're spending a heck of a lot of money and generating a heck of a lot of tax in Virginia that they may not otherwise do. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions about the story, but what I would ask is you give me another week to work with some of the stakeholders on this and see if we can come up with a reasonable approach to try to resolve this issue.
Thank you. I just have one question, Senator Stewart. Would it be the advantage to somebody to purchase an airplane in another state because the sales tax and use tax is lower, and then keep it in Virginia a lot of the time, or travel to Virginia frequently because it would be more expensive to buy that vehicle in Virginia and house it in Virginia? Is that?
I can't answer that question. I talked with Nick Donahue a little bit on this, and Nick was the one who told me that actually the state where he keeps his plane in Florida, where he paid the tax is actually higher than it is in Virginia. Yeah. So I don't know I guess if you have an airplane that costs a lot of money, you typically want to keep that thing in a hangar if you can afford it or somewhere like that. I don't really know the answer to that. Mm-hmm. But it seems to me that, and I understand where you're going, Mr. Chairman, we certainly need to allow for people who are trying to avoid or game the system. But in my particular instance, I have a constituent who actually has paid far in excess of what Virginia would charge them and continues to pay it and shouldn't have to pay it twice.
Thank you. Just for before we,
Mr. Chairman,
have a motion to take the bill by for the week.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Obenchain.
Senator Stewart, where do you keep your plane?
I don't have one, but I'm hoping one of these days you're going to take me for a ride on yours, Senator Obenshain.
Senator Obenshain has horse-drawn vehicles in his. If you could, I'd like someone to provide us with a motion here to take this by for the week, but I will tell you that the Department of Aviation, that these taxes are about 60 to 70% of their operating revenues. This would be a $9.5 million hit. So let's, can I have a motion to take it by for the week for Senator
Move to
Stewart?
take it by.
Second, do I have a second? All in favor? All right, Senator Stewart, next, what do you got for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1229. Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute that I hope the staff has or has provided you all with, but I'll tell you what it does. The original bill created a Ducks Unlimited license plate that was revenue sharing. I actually have a substitute to just switch the existing plate that we have to revenue sharing.
Do we have, excuse me, staff, do we have the substitute?
Yes, sir. It's currently posting online. I'm happy to describe it while we wait. Or Stuart can describe it.
Could you describe that for us, Ms. Wallmeyer?
Yes, sir. So the bill as introduced creates a new license plate program for the Ducks Unlimited license plate, including a revenue sharing provision. It was brought to my attention by the Department of Motor Vehicles that there actually is already a Ducks Unlimited plate. It's just not revenue sharing. So the substitute takes the existing authorization and adds the same revenue sharing language that was in the introduced bill. So it's technical. It's very.
Thank you very much.
Right here, Senator Cosgrove.
Senator Cosgrove.
Mr. Chairman, I believe if we turn this into a revenue plate, it's going to cost more each year to renew this. I'm not sure it's really fair to people that already own these plates. They paid the vanity fee to then all of a sudden lop on another $15 and $25 without them having agreed to that when they bought the plate.
Senator Stewart, could
Mr.
you?
Chairman, in response to that, I was requested to carry this by Ducks Unlimited. These folks have the option of purchasing it or not, but Senator Cosgrove is correct. There's an additional $25 extra, and a portion of that $25 after 1,000 license. So currently, I think there are 1,400 DU plates in existence in the state. They would get a small portion of that $25 to go into a non-reverting fund for Ducks Unlimited purposes. So there'd be a small amount of revenue to help support the Ducks.
But Senator Stewart, there'd be a big increase for each of the individual.
Be an increase for each individual license, and I think they understand that. And people can decide whether or not they want to buy it or not after that.
We have Senator Favola.
Thank you. Is this a common practice in the other types of licenses that we issue? Is your substitute in line with other practices, similar practices?
My understanding, Commissioner Hall, I brought the bill to make a revenue sharing plate, and I thought actually if we did that, the other plate would disappear. And he emailed me and said, doesn't work that way, you'd end up with two plates. So offer substitute just to make the existing plate revenue sharing. And it's my understanding that this is along the lines with every other revenue sharing plate.
Unless you're going to take public comment, I'm going to move to report.
Could we have first off, any comment from the public in favor of the bill?
Did y'all adopt the substitute, Mr. Chairman?
No, I don't have it.
We have not. We have a motion to adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Substitutes before us. So, anyone in favor of the bill? At this time, I'd like to ask, before we get to those who are opposed to the bill, Commissioner Holcomb, could you comment on the bill? Anything you would like to add?
Mr. Chairman, Rick Holcomb, DMV Commissioner, and to answer Senator Favola's question, this has happened a number of times in the past. I can recall the Eastern Shore plate was converted to a revenue sharing, and one of the Blue Ridge plates, one of the national park plates, Senator Cosgrove is right. There were some folks who chose not to renew the plate at a higher fee, but the organizations went that direction, and the majority of the folks did agree to pay the higher fee.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Holcomb. Anyone else in favor of the bill would like to speak? Anyone out
Mr.
there?
Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Just one more question for Senator Stewart. You said this bill helps support the ducks, right? But you shoot ducks. So you helping yourself with this or what?
It's look, we got to have more ducks if we're going to shoot them. And let me put this into terms you'd understand. Since you're from Chesapeake, you've heard the old adage, save the crabs so we can eat them. It's the same principle.
Thank you, Senator Stewart and Senator Cosgrove. Anyone here on board to speak against the bill? All right, there we are. We operate on a motion. Do we have one?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we report the bill. We probably have to re-refer it to finance, or
it is on that.
Isn't it on your sheet?
No, sir.
So the motion would be to report and refer to finance. And we have a, do we have a second? Second. All right. Could you open the roll?
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This one is not on the list. This does not need to go to finance.
You do not believe it needs to go to finance?
No, sir, it does not.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Could we?
So I move to report the bill.
Okay, we have an amended motion to support the bill as directly to the floor. Do we have a second? Okay, open the roll. All in favor, vote aye. Opposed, nay.
With your
Those two.
friend.
Members of the committee, even Senator Cosgrove and Senator Stanley. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 1335 is a cleanup bill from last year's hands-free telephone action that we took, and now this applies the same principle that we applied to the general public or adult drivers to learner's permits, and that is all the bill does.
Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Questions of the patron?
Mr. Chairman? Boysko, over here.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you. Don't we already have that provision that students are not allowed to have their phones in their hands when they get their permits and when?
I'm having a hard time understanding.
Oh,
Senator
my
Boysko.
apology.
But the language, if I may, the language was different in the bill. All right, Senator Serval's going to help me.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Serval for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The problem with this statute vis-a-vis the one we passed is that this statute has secondary offense language in it. And so this statute says that that you're not allowed to stop somebody with a learner's permit for having their phone in their hand. And so what it does is it creates an enforcement problem, because if a police officer can't ascertain whether somebody is of learner permit age or what they have, they might not be able to stop them. And given that we eliminated all the language about secondary offense from the bill probably in 2011, it was important to make them both identical so a police officer could actually stop somebody.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Obenchain.
So this bill does or doesn't promote pretextual stops?
Mr. Chairman.
Could I ask staff, Ms. Wallmeyer, could you?
So, Mr. Chairman.
That was kind of for Senator Serval.
Well, I want to go to a real authority.
I'm batting zero so far today, so hopefully I can pipe in correctly. But the state of the law is the bill that went into effect a few weeks ago on January 1 for adult drivers, for lack of a better term, says that it's a primary offense if you are holding yourself in while you're driving. Our current law for provisional drivers or people with learner's permit, as was noted by Senator Boysko, that is on the books, but the current law right now is that it's a secondary offense. And then on March 1st, when changes that you adopted during special session go into effect, a person will not be able to be pulled over at all. So this bill is attempting to make apply the same criteria regardless of the type of license a person has.
So, Mr. Chairman, follow-up question.
Senator Obenshain.
So I take that is a yes. This allows pretextual stops, facilitates pretextual stops for learner's permit drivers.
I'm happy to answer
Chairman,
his question.
I don't know how you.
Lisa,
I don't know how to answer that question, Mr. Chairman, because I don't know how you determine if somebody has a learner's permit or not when they're driving down the highway. And so this just equalizes it for learner's permits and adults.
Okay. Could we go back to the Supreme Court, Senator Serval? What do you?
Mr. Chairman, I'm good. Another smart lawyer on the outside said we should just eliminate all this language anyway, given that it already applies to learner's permit people. There's no need for a special rule for learner's permit people in the code anyway, but that might be a cleaner way to deal with it, but we can talk about that later maybe.
Yeah, I would think we could get this out of here, and if we come up with a better solution on the floor, we could certainly take that up. Senator Stewart, does that make sense to you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyone else have a question for Senator Stewart or for staff? All right.
At the appropriate
operate on a motion?
Move to report.
Have a motion to report and a second. Clerk, could you open the roll?
It's 14, no 0.
Noes, 0. The bill reports.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you, Senator
I don't
Stewart.
have to explain that one on the floor. That's good.
There you go. And you have one more?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 1337. Mr. Chairman, you all are familiar with the golf cart laws. This is a little bit outside of your traditional, I brought this bill for Senator McDougal's district because I live so close to those folks, or my office is so close to those folks in the lower part of Westmoreland County. There's a subdivision called Cabin Point. There's another one called Stratford Harbor, and these were big old subdivisions that were built many years ago. The developers went broke because nobody ever bought the lots, and it's taken forever for them to build out, and they still haven't built out. But they have small clubhouses, they have swimming pools, they have waterfront access and things like that. But the speed limits are also 40 miles an hour. And so they would like to have the ability to drive a golf cart from their home to the swimming pool, or their home to the beach, or their home to the river. And these are roads that are not used very much. So the way we drafted this was you could do it on a street that was 40 miles an hour as long as there were less than 1,000 cars a day on it. And 1,000 cars a day probably sounds like a lot, but it's actually not if compared to where most folks come from. VDOT probably has some concerns about this. I don't know. It's a policy decision. These folks want this. It requires an ordinance of the locality, and the locality's not going to adopt an ordinance unless the people in the subdivision want it to happen and believe it can be done safely. So,
Senator Stewart, would it be appropriate to ask VDOT whether they might consider a change in speed limit on this particular road?
Nobody wants to change the speed limit, Mr. Chairman. You know that.
Well, Senator Stewart, sometimes we can't have it both ways. But any questions from
Mr. Chairman?
the committee? Senator Favola.
Thank you. So this would just be for public highway within the certain jurisdiction, because it's going to be governed by a local ordinance?
Yes, it would be required to have a local ordinance. First, there has to be a local ordinance done by the county government, and it can only be in a 40-mile-per-hour zone where there's less than 1,000 cars a day.
And within that jurisdiction?
Correct.
So people could cross over and not realize, would it be possible for somebody in their golf cart to go out of that parameter where the highway was?
They put these little signs up, and I don't know if you've ever, we have one in Colonial Beach, and they say golf cart community. And so you see the signs and people are aware of it, and I don't think that's a concern. I guess anything's possible, but
a follow-up question.
Would be in a subdivision.
What about the safety issues related to, if you're not going to reduce the speed limit, and even if you have signs up that say golf cart community, a golf cart is very different than an automobile or even a motorcycle. So what has the history been with, what's the safety history on this type of?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Revolt, I couldn't tell you. I'm not aware of the safety history on golf cart communities. I'm not aware that there's, I mean, they do everything in the golf carts that you do in a car. They even get DUIs. And golf carts go. I mean, they're not the golf carts of our youth. These golf carts go these days.
All right. We have in the queue Senator Eben.
And briefly, a question for Senator Stewart. This one is on highways of up to 40 miles an hour. I noticed that they can do it in Colonial Beach, 35 miles an hour and 25 miles in general. Can the golf carts go 40 miles an hour? Can they keep up with the traffic?
I'm reluctant to answer that question, but I would be shocked if they couldn't, Senator Eben.
Okay.
Because they have them now with engines. They have them with electric motors. I mean, they're just much more sophisticated than what you and I were used to in
Thank you.
the years.
Senator Stanley.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the senator to the rich and famous.
No, Mr.
If I may ask it. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the senator to the rich and famous whether these golf carts would be equipped with safety signals so that those vehicles that require such indicators, such as a turn signal or the like, would be able to see what direction they're going at the time they're operating these. And would they have lights? I mean, do these carts, are they allowed to be driven at night without lights? What?
Mr. Chairman, as much as it pains me to answer his question, I believe that they have to comply with all the other rules of the road. I'm not certain of that, but I think they do have to have turn signals and lights and otherwise comply.
Okay. Mr. Chairman.
I think that's correct.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question.
Senator Stanley.
What I would ask the senator how many golf carts are we talking about that will be all of a sudden zipping around Westmoreland County in these areas?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Stanley, I don't suspect they will be zipping around Westmoreland County. They zip around the town of Colonial Beach already. There is a particular subdivision called Cabin Point, which is in Senator McDougal's district, who would like the ability to do this as well. So it was crafted in such a way that that subdivision may be able to take advantage of it.
And how many would there be?
I don't know.
Less than 1,000 at a time.
No, it's not. It's not a lot of people in that sub. I mean, the whole county's got 12,000, 13,000 people in it. I don't know how many in this one subdivision.
Okay. All right. Senator Eben.
Yeah, just briefly for Senator Stanley, on line 31, it requires that they only be operating during daylight hours unless they're equipped with lights.
Thank you.
I thank the gentleman.
Okay.
Would the senator, the patron, I mean, do you live in this neighborhood? Is this or a neighborhood where golf carts are utilized?
No, I do not.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Is there anyone on the line who would like to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone who would like to speak opposed to the bill before I call on VDOT to make a comment? Ms. Maxwell, you're there from VDOT. Would you care to comment on this legislation?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, members of the committee, just for the opportunity. I will say that VDOT does not have an official position on the bill, but nevertheless, Senator Stewart is correct. We do have some concerns. One of the most significant concerns is the operation of these vehicles, which we understand generally have top speeds of about 25 miles an hour on a road with a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. The concern there is that as you increase speed differentials amongst vehicles on highways, that increases the opportunity for crashes and even severity of crashes. We have concerns because the golf carts do not have to have the type of safety equipment you would see in another vehicle. equipment both to protect the other drivers on the road as well as the occupants of the vehicle. I would note that there was mention of the town of Colonial Beach. The rules of the road there are the golf carts can operate on roads with speeds up to 25 miles an hour. They can cross roads with speeds up to 35 miles an hour if signs are posted. But generally, we have concerns with the fact that these vehicles would be operating on roads with higher speeds, notwithstanding the limitation on the number of vehicles involved, the differential in the speed limits, and the potential speeds between the types of vehicles on that road are concerning to us.
Thank you, Joanne. Captain Maxey, do you wish to weigh in on this from State Police? He's not, believe, on the line. All right. My personal view here is that this is beginning to push the edge of the...
Chairman, if I could just respond to Ms. Maxwell. The reality of this is the fact of this is you probably could sit on the road in Cabin Point and count cars all day, and I don't know if you'd see 50 or 100 tops, and the frequency at which they come through. These are isolated areas, and there's just no safety hazard to it, frankly. But
Thank
anyway,
you, Senator Stewart. Captain Maxey, I see you pop up on the screen. Would you care to comment?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. They were letting me into the room. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. We can.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I have not spoken to the patron. We don't have a position on this, but I will point out the fact that I know a lot of the conversation is geared towards golf cart. 46.2-100 provides definitions, and this code section does allow golf carts or utility vehicles. These are both defined separately in the Code of Virginia under 46.2-100. And a utility vehicle means any motor vehicle that is designed for off-road use, powered by a motor, or used for general maintenance, security, agriculture. So this could include four-wheel vehicles, dune buggy type vehicles. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, since the conversation was only addressing the golf carts and the safety equipment on that there is a different category of vehicle that also could utilize this and take advantage of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that was a drafting error, and if the committee's inclined to move it forward, I don't have any problem amending that out just to allow golf carts.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Favola.
are you wedded to this 40 miles per hour?
He has the need for speed.
I believe it is a bad precedent to set to start getting into the 40 mile an hour kind of road, and but that's just my opinion. We operate on a motion, but Senator Stewart says we have a need for an amendment here.
If you all inclined to support the bill, I'm happy to amend out utility vehicles. It's
well, I hate to vote on a bill that we don't know what the outcome's going to be. Either we're going to amend it or not.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Who was the first voice I heard? Who?
Newman.
Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I just would make a motion that we amend the bill to be what the patron wanted, which is golf carts, and then we'll vote on it up or down based on that. So I would so move.
Do we have a second to that motion? Second. All in favor of the motion to amend the bill as described by Senator Newman, say aye. All those opposed? Okay, we have two more folks in the queue. Senator Eben.
Yeah, very briefly, I was just looking up the top speed, at least of one golf cart manufacturer for gasoline golf carts is 19 miles an hour, but for electric 25. So we're talking about a significant speed differential. This was from December 2019. Things may have changed, but I'm not comfortable with that big a disparity.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on, Senator Favola. We have thank you, Senator Eben. Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for the patron. If I'm on Cabin Point Drive, do I need to drive 45 miles an hour to get down to Chubby's Charter that fast? I mean, have they considered, requesting VDOT lowering the speed limit to more conform to other areas? I mean, Cabin Point Drive isn't, too long itself, and just a jot away from Chubby's. So,
Mr. Chairman, in all honesty, it's sort of a long, desolate road, and that's why they don't want to drop the speed limit.
Okay. The bill is before us as amended. Do I have a motion?
Since my amendment will not be viewed as a friendly amendment, I'm going to gently ask that we gently PBI the bill.
Motion is to pass the by bill indefinitely. We have a second. Clerk, could we open the roll? All right.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
All right.
Noes 5. The bill is PBI'd. Senator Stewart, your airplane bill soared. Your golf cart bill crashed.
Didn't do too well. I'll tell the folks in Cabin Point. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have, is Senator Edwards here? Or, oh, he called? All right. Okay.
Strike my bill. Strike my bill. Strike it.
Strike it? Hold on.
Senate Bill 1217, I would bring your attention to the top of that bill right under the number. This would change state policy to allow VDOT to accept a private road into the system under these conditions. If the private road is used as a shortcut between two state roads, that the private road serves as at least 10 households, and that the road has served households for a minimum of 45 years, and that the county will be willing to support a dedicated 1% local real estate tax on the property owners within the subdivision.
Senator Ruff, what is then the advantage if the county is still going to have to pay for it? What is the advantage of assigning it over to the state?
Mr. Chairman, if you would, it's not at state standards now. If you look at right below the number of the bill, you'll see the motivation for the bill, and I committed to come before you.
I'm sorry?
I committed to come before you and ask this
question. Okay. Thank you, Senator Ruff. Questions from the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senator Eben here.
Senator Eben.
Senator, the bill is pretty precise and specific about that it's ones that have been served for 45 years and so forth. Can you tell us, is this going to, whatever the fee that's being assessed on this private road or the homeowners, will that fee cover bringing it up to standards?
Will the fee cover it? Probably in about 50 years it could cover it, yes.
Over time, okay.
What other questions? Senator Boysko.
Yes, Mr. Chair, a question for the patron. Have you heard from VACO or VML on their position on this bill? VACO or VML, our counties?
Involved. I think that the VDOT would like to mention something, and that probably would cut off most of the debate.
Okay. Any other questions before we get to VDOT, who may offer some clarity here that will get us moving down the road? Anyone? Okay. Joanne, from VDOT, could you weigh in on this?
Mr. Chair, Joanne Maxwell from VDOT. I wanted to point out, first of all, that generally conditions that are set out in law with regard to bringing roads such as this road into the state system or the secondary system require that the road be brought up to VDOT standards. That includes certain widths, certain characteristics of the road that ensure it's safe, and also to ensure that there are necessary easements associated with that road for things such as drainage, et cetera. The law today, and this bill would eliminate that requirement for this particular road. The law would require that the road be brought up to VDOT standards, and then at that point, the VDOT would take over the maintenance of the road. Concerns we have with this bill, number one, is the road is not required per the legislation to be brought up to standards, meaning that in order for VDOT to probably continue to maintain the road and or have it in the secondary system, VDOT would have to incur the costs to bring it up to standards. The other thing I would note is that while they are going to be contributing to the maintenance of the road, We do not believe that the funds that would be contributed per this bill would come close to covering the maintenance associated with this, with a road like this. Particularly when the road has not been brought up to standards, VDOT standards, prior to our initiation of maintenance. So for that reason, we have significant concerns with the bill. We do not have an official position, but we do have concerns. And then finally, lastly, this legislation could potentially open the door for more yet other exemptions or measures that would attempt to forego the requirements that the roads be brought up to standards first before they're brought into the system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell.
Mr. Chairman?
Who we have?
Senator McPike.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the patron has clearly been very responsive to constituent requests in this regard, and seems to also sort of create some new context that may be problematic across the state as this may have moved forward. And so I'd request the body gently PBI and appreciate the patron's sort of responsiveness to constituent concerns and requests, but it seems like it causes significant issues.
Okay, we have a motion to PBI. Do we have a second? We have a motion to PBI and a second. Clerk, could you open the rolls? Thank you. Thank you, Senator Ruff. Is Senator Edwards out there? Senator Edwards, I think you have two bills for us. Senate Bill 1212 and Senate Bill 1214. Which would you like to take first?
Start 1214. This is a Code Commission bill that's about as simple as it can be. It repeals a section of the code that was put in 2001, and it provided that whenever Congress establishes the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, the state would transfer to that authority its assets in connection with what was then called the Metropolitan Washington Airports assets would go to the Federal Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority. And that's all it does.
Move to report.
It repeals the
Well,
section of code no longer needed.
any other questions from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who is in favor of the bill or opposed to the bill? Is there anyone in the queue? All right, we have a motion and a second to pass the bill. Clerk, could you open the roll?
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. The bill passes. And
Mr. Chairman.
number 1212.
Members of the committee, Senate Bill 1212 is requested by the New River Valley. This is to create a rail passenger, to build and to operate a rail passenger authority in the New River Valley. It will require no state funding to do this. And this is how it would work. The governor's already put in $50 million to expand Amtrak from Roanoke to Christiansburg, whenever that happens. The localities in the New River Valley have created what is known as the NRV Rail 2020. NRV Rail 2020 was to get the Amtrak to Christiansburg by 2020, which is, last I noticed, has come and gone. So we want to get there as quickly as possible. Give you a little background. In October 2017, we started Amtrak from Roanoke to Lynchburg. That particular train has been remarkably successful. In 2019 alone, that calendar year, 223,000 riders took Amtrak. And the first 2 months of 2020, before the COVID came in, it was up 14% the first 2 months. A second train, the Amtrak train from Christiansburg, would be a second train for Roanoke. Roanoke only has one train now, from approximately 6:30 in the morning, goes all the way to Boston and comes back about 10 o'clock at night. This means Roanoke would have a second train, and the New River Valley would have a train as well. It would be the train that starts, the plan would be in Christiansburg at this rail passenger station, and it would anticipated to add 70,000 new riders for Amtrak. And this, as I say, this particular train already from Roanoke has been extraordinarily successful, and more so than most people thought it might be to begin with. This authority has been set up in the following way, based on the agreement among the people who live in the New River Valley. Montgomery County and its entities, the County of Montgomery, Town of Blacksburg, Virginia Tech, and the Town of Christiansburg would raise about $280,000 a year. 78% of what they anticipate would be about $360,000 a year. In addition, the other localities in the New River Valley, Pulaski County, Town of Pulaski, the City of Radford, Radford University, Giles County, and Floyd County, they would make up the difference between about 22% of what is needed. And they're all ready to go. All we need is authority to do it. Be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Wallmeyer, could I ask you something? This is a very long bill. Is this consistent with other similar bills that have been drawn in the past?
Yes, sir. It, Mr. Chairman, it has fairly standard language related to the creation of authorities, albeit specifically with transportation references.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any questions from the committee?
Does anybody from the New River Valley would like to speak? I know Diane Akers may be interested in saying a word or two.
Okay. Could we open up to the public, and is there anyone here to speak in favor of the bill?
Jennifer Mitchell's here from DRPT.
Yes, yes, Ms. Mitchell, who is the head of rail and public transportation. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to let you know that the administration does strongly support this bill. We appreciate the work that Senator Edwards has done over the years to help promote passenger rail in his district. We are working very hard right now with Norfolk Southern and are closer than ever in being able to extend passenger rail service to the New River Valley. As the senator mentioned, the governor did include a budget amendment for $50 million also to help support that effort. So we do support the creation of the authority as a means to help us complete this extension and to potentially own and fund future station facilities. Thank you.
A fine endorsement. Thank you very much. Anyone else in favor of speaking? Yes, Miss Leslie Hager-Smith.
Yes, hi. I am the mayor of the town of Blacksburg, and I'm glad to be with you here today on behalf of the multiple localities and also universities. You know, the New River Valley is home to a community college and 2 large universities. So we've already demonstrated that we will give our patronage to the Roanoke and Lynchburg lines, but this would really be a boon to our area. Municipal bodies and universities in the New River Valley have considerable cooperative experience operating local authorities, and those include the New River Valley Water Authority, the New River Valley Resource Authority for Solid Waste, the Peppers Ferry Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility, the New River Regional Jail Authority. So this is something that we do customarily, and we do it very well. We also have the Virginia Tech Montgomery Airport. Our New River Valley Public Health Task Force has been so successful that it has been named an exemplar by the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. And likewise, we are well ahead on delivery of vaccines on par with Northern Virginia, because regional cooperation is something we do par excellence.
That's great. I think this may be in pretty good shape here. Does anyone else need to offer something different?
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I move we report and re-refer to finance.
Okay, the motion is to report and refer to finance. We have a second. Clerk, open the rolls.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. The bill reports. Thank you,
Mr.
Senator Edwards.
Chairman and members of the committee, you're great Americans.
We are indeed. We have Senator Mason. Do you have something for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have
Bill 1329.
Yes, sir. That's it. 1329 was brought to me by the City of Newport News. And I reached out also to the Virginia Chiefs of Police and Dana Shad and had some folks who were enthusiastic about that bill kind of take a look at it and help it. And if you look at lines 36 through 38, that's what we're trying to avoid. So today, if you issue a traffic ticket Any person refusing to give such witness promise to appear under the provisions of the section shall be taken immediately by the arresting officer before a magistrate or other issuing officer having jurisdiction who shall proceed accordingly. So we're trying to get to the point that if you issue a traffic ticket and the person refuses to sign, you can de-escalate the situation. You don't have to cuff them and take them into a magistrate, which today is the law. I've spoken to some attorneys who do this type of work to make sure that I've done it correctly, because as you know, I'm a non-lawyer, so I look to some of our attorneys in the group to...
That's a mistake.
Yeah, I understand, but... So the only change is line 24, upon the issuance of summons notice of such person, the police wanted to make sure that if there were a different, not a traffic summons, drunk in public, something going on, that they could still arrest them, if whether they signed or not. I think line 48 may cover that, believed by the arresting officer likely disregard the summons. But again, I am not imposing legal will. I am just telling you we're trying to avoid what we're trying to avoid with this legislation.
Senator Mason, this would also avoid some rather long drives for police who are out in a rural area and needing to be on patrol, and it would take up a good part of their shift to take someone in merely for refusing to sign a statement. Is that correct?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
All right, there we go. Any questions from the committee? Anyone in the audience who would like to comment on the bill? Any in favor?
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on one second, Senator Servo. We have Jerry Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Want to thank Senator Mason for bringing this forward. Our police department is very enthusiastic about it. We believe that not only does it create some efficiency for the department in terms of time and resources, but it also helps to avoid escalating what is already potentially an uncomfortable situation between the police officer and our residents.
Okay.
So we definitely appreciate Senator Mason, and we totally support the bill.
Okay, thank you. Anyone out there who is opposed to the bill? Senator Servo, you had a comment, a question?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that speaking to the bill, I've been approached by other law enforcement advocates over the last 3 months who are also looking to make this policy change because they feel like the current system where you have to sign for the summons creates an unnecessary amount of conflict on the side of the road when somebody's pretty hot and they're being accused of something, and that this will help to reduce forceful interactions between citizens and law enforcement. And I've also run it by some defense counsel to see if they had concerns about the lack of a signature as a matter of record, and they didn't have any concerns. So I think this bill is a good idea.
Mr. Chairman, I move to report the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
Staff.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I just want to get clarification, if I could, Senator Mason. It's my understanding the signature line is a promise to either appear or pay the fine. It's one or the other. It's not as stated earlier, so I just want to clarify and make sure I understand it properly. It's been maybe a long time since I've had to sign on the line for something like this. And I'm not pleading the fifth that I've ever had to do that more than a few times. Mr. Chairman, if I may further, I believe that it's not an admission of guilt. It just says, I'll either promise to appear or I'll promise to pay a fine.
Yeah. I believe, if I can speak for, on this, it seems that this is just a common practice that's been put into place that has no particular force in law. If you're given this summons, the police officer has a copy, and if you don't show up in court, there are consequences. And I think this bill de-escalates certain situations and also keeps officers on the road and not doing exercises in long transportation just to handle somebody who's having a bad day. Any other committee questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Who do we have? Senator Cosgrove.
I think that this bill actually doesn't have the the problems that it could have had with the preponderance of body cams now. Basically, the officer is going to have a video evidence that that person received that summons. So, I mean, it just seems to add more benefit to this bill.
Thank you, Senator Cosgrove. I agree. Do we have a motion on the bill?
My motion, Senator Marsden, or Mr. Chairman, I had made a motion to report.
We have a second? We have a motion and a second to report. All in favor, vote aye. All opposed? There we go. Okay.
Ayes 13, noes 1.
Ayes 13, noes 1. The bill reports.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
All right. Thank you very much. Senator Lewis, I believe, or excuse me, Senator Bell is here. I think, Senator Bell, you have 1260. Yes, sir. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill actually changes the current process, which requires 2 certified mailings to each.
Mr. Chairman, microphone.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The current process, if there's going to be land surveys, requires 2 certified mailings per property owner. First is a request for permission to enter the property at least 15 days prior to the survey. Regardless of whether the property owner provides permission or not, a second notice must be sent 15 days in advance, notifying the resident property owner that the project staff will make entry for the purpose of survey and inspection as it pertains to transportation projects. What this bill does is it gets rid of the first notice, since they're technically allowed to go there anyway. It saves the county money. It saves some time. This is a request from Prince William County. I will tell you, I've talked with my friends at the Farm Bureau. They liked the first notice, which asked for permission before going. I hear their point. Was actually looking into see, not legislatively, we proceed with this bill, that we could possibly do some sort of an electronic notification, which would then not cost any money, but still give that permission notice in advance, even though it's technically not required. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions. It's a fairly simple bill. It's an effort to alleviate that first certified mailing and the costs associated with it and the burden from counties.
So we're not changing much policy here. We're just basically streamlining.
Mr. Chairman?
2 mailings to 1 mailing.
Senator Obenchain.
Mr. Chairman, actually, we are making some changes in policy. We have actually tried to conform this process, and over the past few years, we have established the same procedure for VDOT as other agencies, and this puts VDOT back under its own rules rather than having the uniform set of rules across the state. So, I am pretty deeply concerned about that. I mean, this is makes it a more complicated maze for property owners.
Mr. Chairman, I can see.
Yes, Senator Bell.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can see the senator's concerns. However, I would say it doesn't make it more complicated; it makes it less, since it actually reduces one of the steps. But I understand that viewpoint very well. I do know that we've got people from Prince William County. I think Devin Cabot is waiting in the queue and would like to speak to it. I don't know if there is others, perhaps the Farm Bureau or others.
Okay. Anyone else on the committee have a question for Senator Bell? All right. Could we get to those in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I think you have a question for Senator Steph.
I've got one quick question on this.
Senator Steph.
And I'm trying to better understand it. So I think I understand it, but I'm not sure. And I believe it actually is a policy change. The way I read this is right now you have to get the owner's permission within 15 days of the request. So, or you have to request a permission. This says that you've got the right to go onto his property without getting his permission if you just send a letter 30 days before. So I just want to make sure I'm not reading this wrong, but is that kind of the intent of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I'll clarify. They send the first notice, which is currently it's a request, but even if the property owner does not agree with the request, or doesn't respond, they still have the right to enter on the second request to do the survey. So they're still allowed to go there, but it takes away that step of giving them an advance notice before they go there. It's a nicety, I would call it.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Obenshain.
You know, out in Western Virginia, I mean, there has been a fight raging over access to private property, and it hadn't been really over VDOT, but it's been over pipelines. Mm-hmm. And you know, property owners, you know, have felt very strongly about allowing, you know, Dominion or Mountain Valley pipelines onto their property. So I don't know why we would make it easier for VDOT under these circumstances. I mean, we worked hard to make sure that those property rights were protected. You know, property owners may not ultimately be able to stop them from coming on, but they at least deserve that kind of notice. And this is, I think, pretty consistent with the notice requirements that are required by others to protect those property owners. So if we're going to protect them and give them certain rights for pipeline developers, I think at least we could do is abide by the same rules for Department of Transportation.
Yeah. Senator Obenshain, you know, I understand, you know, where you're going with this, but I do draw a distinction between a state agency and, you know, a private developer, you know, exercising, you know, some kind of right to build a pipeline that's been put through by the federal government. But the one thing I think here is it sets up an unrealistic information. You're asking somebody for permission, and then you're saying, well, we come in anyway. That's a prescription for getting somebody mad. Whereas if you change this simply to, hey, we're coming out, and then there's a second notice, then, you know, I think there would be less anger and upset over that than that unrealistic expectation that you're being asked permission, and then you're being told, well, we're coming in anyway. That would make me more angry than just being advised twice that you're coming on the property.
Mr. Chairman, can I, at risk of, I don't want to engage in a running debate, but let me just point out one thing with respect to the chair's comments. You know, we adopted a constitutional amendment back in 2012, and quite frankly, that was geared more towards making sure that property owners were more protected against takings and condemnations and entry by the state than even by utilities or railroads. They were exempt from that. So the people of Virginia, in adopting that constitutional amendment, actually clamped down, made it clear that it was their intention to clamp down harder on intrusions onto personal property by the state than those private developers, which many of us didn't really love, but that was the deal.
Thank you, Senator Obenshain. Senator DeStefano.
The issue I have with this, Mr. Chairman, is you're saying VDOT has one set of rules where everybody else has another set of rules. And as Senator Obenshain just said, I think that you're going to hit a constitutional challenge on this, because VDOT should not have any more power, any more authority to walk on somebody's property. They should have to go through what everybody else out there has to do. When you set up a distinction between the two and say, VDOT, you don't have to worry about it, all you have to do is send a letter and then go, I think you're running into a major issue here, and this truly is a policy issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, I would just say in response to that, I agree with your comments that there's a big difference when it's a government entity versus a private entity. And I will say, while I said surveys, to clarify in the bill, and this is actually existing code, if you have the lines 14 through 21, you'll note that there's many things that are actually done, and many of these things I think are done to the benefit of the property owner. They look for testing, soil borings, testing for contamination, appraisals, other actions that may be desirable, actually determine if it would be beneficial for roads, things that help the economics in that area. But contamination, if there is contamination that could be caused by highways and roads there, that definitely benefits the property owner. So I think there is a distinction there. I do hear the concerns, but again, I think it was confusing when there's 2 notices, but frankly, regardless of the first one, they were still allowed to go.
Mr. Chairman, we have an expert witness who can, I believe that local governments can go on property to check for leaky sewage pipes, to check the water usage with just a notice of intent. So I'd like some clarification on that, because to the patron's point, my view is it's not like somebody is entering an individual's home. Somebody is looking at property that is privately owned, but could potentially serve a public purpose and would not be doing any harm to the property.
Thank you, Senator Favola. Any other comments from the committee before we get to the folks for and against? Okay, can we open up and those who wish to speak in favor of the bill? We have Paolo Belita.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Paulo Belita. I'm a regional planning and programming manager with Prince William County Department of Transportation. And as the bill currently states, we have the same authority as the Commissioner of Highways, or VDOT, as a local agency or jurisdiction. So Prince William County Department of Transportation supports SB 1260 to streamline the survey notification process. Currently, during a design phase of a transportation project, whether it's a widening project or a sidewalk, and we need to enter the property to complete a survey, whether it's looking at the boundaries, conducting a noise study. As mentioned earlier, we're required to send a letter to the property requesting permission. And this is typically a letter overnight with a postcard, and if you give permission, they would return a postcard. And we send this no less than 15 days prior to the proposed date of surveying. And if there's no response received, the code does allow us to enter the property with a mailing of a second letter, the notice of intent. And some experience that the main issues we're having here at the county is we're not getting a lot of response rates. Yeah. And when we do send the second mailing, we get a lot of confusion and concerns from constituents and citizens. So we do get a lot of negative feedback on the confusion of the process. And it does add to the cost when we do the multiple mailings. Currently, the county can have 10 projects in design at any time. And then depending on the size of a project, we could send at least 100 notifications of properties for some of the largest projects. So we do ask for support of this bill to streamline the process and make it more straightforward. The proposed 30 days before the notice of intent still gives time for questions if we get any questions from any citizens or constituents.
Thank you, Mr. Belita. Anyone else in favor of the bill? Anyone on the line who is opposed to the bill would like to address the committee? No. Andrew Smith from the Farm Bureau. Hi, Andrew. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andrew Smith, Virginia Farm Bureau Federation. And as the patron said, we did reach out to his office and express opposition to the bill because we do support the current process. Anybody, including myself, that has received the notice that VDOT wants to come on your property and inspect for potential taking, it is really unnerving. And so we believe a more respectful approach, such as the two-part process in the code now, is the way to go. So for that, we do prefer to keep the current language. Thank you.
Andrew, my issue had been, as you may have heard earlier, that it actually, I think, creates more contention to ask whether you can come on the property. And then when they say no, then you tell them you're going to be, you have the right to come on anyway. Doesn't that create more contention than just the assumption that let's get to the final issue here, which is, we have the right to do that with proper notice?
Honestly, Mr. Chairman, I'd say it would depend on who received and how they took it. I guess in my case, I took it the other way.
Okay, thank you so much. Any final comments or questions from the committee? We operate on a motion. Oh, excuse me. We have some others who, Mr. Baker, Joshua Baker.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members, Joshua Baker. I'm a partner at Waldo and Lyle. All I do is represent property owners in eminent domain takings cases. This letter and the current scheme is pretty much the first contact that maybe an owner gets from the condemning entity. whether it's VDOT, county, maybe a different entity. But it's the first point of official contact. And I think when the owner gets the letter that says, we're coming onto your property in 30 days, that sets a tone for the rest of the process. I'd agree with Mr. Smith and some others who said, it's a much more respectful thing to ask permission and then later explain that perhaps you're going to still come out anyway. I think an easy solution is change that first letter to also inform that owner that
You're going to come on.
Ultimately this is going to happen. Okay, and that the power is there for it to happen, but they're asking permission. That gives an owner an opportunity to accommodate that invasion onto their property, to be there with these folks, or work out and understand a little bit better what the actual scope of things are. I think a second point that Senator Obenshain touched on is very important here. Over the last many years, really going back to that 2012 amendment, the code has been improved to more and more put all condemning agencies on the same footing, playing by the same rules, so that an owner isn't treated differently depending on who it is who's condemning their property. That's very important. And frankly, I think it points to what we ought to be doing with the code, and that is what so many other states do. We have one, they have, and we should have one title for eminent domain power. The way we have it right now, this bill only touches 33.2. Well, there's an analog to this very provision over in 25.1. This bill doesn't do anything about that. And so and it's in other places too. In fact, the controversies with the natural gas pipelines, that takes us to another title, 56.1, where the utility companies, specifically the natural gas companies, were under even more onerous requirements than are here. So there is some disparate treatment of the condemning agencies. The natural gas pipeline companies are typically condemning under a federal, if they're transmission lines, federal power of eminent domain. So Virginia did what it could to make it a little harder on them. Maybe that's something we ought to be looking at here too. So, Mr. Chairman, I take your point that perhaps it sets the wrong tone if you later tell somebody that you don't really care what they have to say, you're going to come on the property anyway. I think that could be alleviated by laying that out in this first letter where permission's asked. As to the cost, that's kind of silly. Look, this is a constitutional, and in 2012, we said it's a fundamental constitutional right to own private property. We're talking about a stamp, and it sounds like a postcard stamp multiplied by 100 times. Is our Constitution so cheap that we would give it away for that? I think not.
Stephen Clark, do you have something to add? Are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Steve Clark. I'm an attorney with Waldo and Lyle in Norfolk, represent property owners in eminent domain cases across Virginia. I appreciate, Mr. Chairman, your thought about whether the sort of request of permission when they ultimately have the ability to come on, whether permission is granted or not, sort of creates more of a tension. But in my experience, Mr. Chairman, when that request for permission is made with that first letter that's currently in the code, it gives, at least my clients, it gives them an opportunity to coordinate with the government that's looking to come out on the property. A lot of times my landowner clients want to be there or have somebody there to know who's going where on their property just to keep it secure. And when that request for permission comes, that gives those landowners an opportunity to coordinate. I appreciate the patrons' desire to kind of streamline the process here, but kind of given that, as others have mentioned, this creates a different treatment than what exists under a different statute in 25.1 of the code, we would just ask the court to not advance the bill.
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have one more. Very quickly, Mr. Stephen Rossi, if do you have anything unique to add here, or just reiterating what the two other gentlemen have stated?
One point, Mr. Chairman. Steve Rossi with the Family Foundation, and we oppose the bill as well. This provision was part of a bill that I believe came out of courts just a couple of years ago, now called Judiciary, with a pretty big bipartisan vote, if not unanimous. So I just urge you guys to have caution about changing this, something that was just passed fairly recently, and with a big bipartisan bill to change the policy so radically so soon after such a big bipartisan vote by both chambers and signed by the governor.
Thank
so
you.
I would just urge that, and maybe refer this to courts to give it a more thorough vetting where it came from originally.
Well, thank you. I just had a brief conversation with the patron, and I think if I could get a motion to have the bill go by for a week, he could probably put in the compromise language that I've heard people talk about here, that yes, we're asking your permission, but also advising them that in the end, there is a right to enter the property. Would that?
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
Second. Okay. Can we have the bill go by for a week for the patron to work on this? And
thank you, and I appreciate these concerns and points. We'll work it. We'll make it better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Delegate Bell. Oh, excuse me, Senator Bell. I recruited him for the House of Delegates. Come on, this is hard. At any rate, thank you all very much. Thank you for your comments. And next we have Senator Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have Senate Bill 1350, and there is a substitute.
Could we, Ms. Walmart, could you report the substitute?
Yes, sir. It is being posted right now. It takes a different approach from the original bill. It does not actually include resiliency in smart scale per se, but some other factors to ensure that state projects take resiliency into account.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Could we have a motion on the substitute?
So moved.
Second? You have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The substitutes before us, Senator Lewis.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 1350 is sort of a first date for resiliency and transportation projects. And as Ms. Wallmeyer said, we've taken a very different tack from the original bill, and this was after consultations with Secretary Donahue, Deputy Secretary of Transportation Donahue, who pointed out that fully incorporating resiliency into smart scale could have some really unintended consequences. So we sort of dropped back and revamped. And so this is an introduction really of resiliency into transportation. And so it does three things. First thing it does is when there's a 6-year plan being prepared, it requires that resiliency be listed among other things when the plan is presented. For instance, the current code requires a recommended list of projects and strategies to be included in the 6-year plan, the results of the screening of the projects, and now also whether the project has been designed to be resilient. And then also, under current code, the results of the evaluation of the projects and the strategies. And the second thing it does is when the state develops its statewide transportation plan, which it does every 4 years and is sort of a 20-year tour of the horizon for transportation in the Commonwealth, it's going to require that one of the things that shall be considered or shall be promoted by that plan is resiliency. And then third and finally, in the enactment clause, it directs the Commissioner of Highways to ensure that resiliency is incorporated into the design standards for new construction projects. And so all of us, particularly those of us in coastal Virginia and Hampton Roads, know of the need to consider resiliency more fully in our transportation projects. And so this is an introduction to make sure that it is considered and discussed and that the public is aware that it's being considered and discussed as we talk about transportation across the Commonwealth, not just in coastal Virginia or Hampton Roads. And so that is the bill, Mr. Chairman.
So in other words, Senator Lewis, what we've got here is you take two projects, and if one is more resilient than the other, that is something that should be taken into consideration.
It doesn't mandate that. It's not
Doesn't
making it part
mandate
of
it.
smart scale, but it introduces it into the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Senator Newman.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my question is a little bit of the opposite of the chairman's. It's not going to put one project over another, is it? Right?
No, Senator Newman, no.
Okay, because that's critical. I mean, resiliency, I think, is important, but we've all kind of agreed on smart scale, and I've got 8 amendments if we're going to go down that road, and I'm sure everyone else does too. You had a substitute, I think, when I was out of the room. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And does the substitute have affirmative language that it does not put projects that say yes to this check mark over others?
It does not have language that says that. If I'll put it a little bit differently. It requires resiliency to be considered. But it doesn't bump projects up, or it's not the intent that it bump projects up because of resiliency. The first iteration of the bill, which you've seen, actually incorporated resiliency into smart scale considerations.
That's correct.
Yeah, and that had all sorts of potential consequences that were not intended. So that's why we've sort of dropped back. And really, I think my interpretation of this bill and the language in it is that it's just trying to fully and completely introduce resiliency into the discussion and the transportation planning. The 6-year plan, the state transportation plan, which is a 20-year plan, and also in future designs. But it does not give a leg up, and it's not the intention that it give a leg up based solely upon resiliency.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Favola.
I just want to be absolutely clear. So to follow up on Senator Newman's question, this does not specifically state it is part of smart scale. So unless it says it's part of smart scale, it is not. But it is part of the planning process. If it's in the 6-year plan or a sector plan, priority must be given. So this is really more part of the planning process than it is a specific project, where smart scale deals with projects.
That's correct, Senator Favola.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. I think that's correct.
That's sort of the difference. In effect, a good developer, if he wants to get the project approved, or if the state wanted to get a project approved, they would look at all the planning stuff. When they presented it on the smart scale platform, if you will, there would be some incorporated elements of resiliency if it was in that particular sector plan in that particular area. Is that right?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Deputy Secretary Nick Donahue from Transportation is on the line. Did you wish to, you have your hand up, do you wish to comment on this particular aspect of the bill?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank Senator Lewis for working with us. Senator Newman, I did just want to confirm what Senator Lewis said. With the substitute to this bill, no projects will get additional points or a leg up, as you kind of phrased it, in the smart scale process. Rather, it provides additional information on a project scorecard that would be available for you all, the members of the board, and others to understand as they look at the scores and evaluate them during the 6-month kind of public comment period.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we get to others who are maybe in favor or against the bill, are there any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so I appreciate the senator's comments that this is a first date, but I've been on some first dates that have turned into some expensive relationships. And I represent people that have first dates that turn into divorces. So could you just give me like an example of like what kinds of things we're talking about? I mean, I'm aware that out where you are, how low you are, that there's probably a need for certain projects to keep some roads from washing away, et cetera. I mean, I know in Northern Virginia we've had, for example, there's a bridge over the Occoquan that washed out in Hurricane Agnes back in 1971 where Route 1 went over. And so I'm just sort of trying to figure out sort of how this cuts in different areas of the state to have a sense of how it would work in my district.
Right. Well, and it's not, Senator Sorrell, it's not necessarily confined to coastal Virginia or Hampton Roads, because we've got significant flooding issues in Danville with the Dan River and other places as well. In Hampton Roads, obviously, we've got, and with hurricanes and increasing frequency and severity of storms, we're going to have flooding issues. And so this just directs transportation projects to consider the resiliency aspect looking forward, whether it's in the 6-year plan, projects that are being scored for the 6-year plan, or whether it's in the 20-year state transportation plan, to look at resiliency and look at the increasing flooding and whatever problems that the areas are experiencing with the transportation projects.
Mr. Chairman, can I follow up? I will take that as a yes, given that he's not at his desk.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is this. Is the idea that that certain projects may ultimately get prioritized because they're more at risk of being hurt, messed up because of climate change issues, or is it more of a question of we need to look at sort of road design, bridge design, stuff like that to make sure it's more capable of withstanding things, or is it a little bit of both, or what?
Position, Senator Sorrell, would be it's a little bit of both, but Secretary Donahue can probably answer that a little bit better than I can. But I think that's the intent, that it's a combination of the two.
Okay.
If he's still on there.
Secretary Donahue.
Yes, Senator Servo. So, as Senator Lewis said, the bill kind of has those three parts. The first thing is making sure our design standards will take into account resiliency for these new construction projects. And then in our long range plan, it's really looking at the implications for these issues over a longer term planning horizon. As Senator Lewis noted, there is the issue of sea level rise down in coastal Virginia, but we also have recurrent flooding in other parts of the state. So, for example, like Newington Road, where it goes under the CSX tracks, is, I know, an area where there's problems in Northern Virginia. There's a fair amount of problems out in the Lynchburg district and in some other parts of the state. And so as we're seeing differences in some of these weather conditions, taking that into account in our long range plan, and then addressing policy implications for the CTB as they think about what those trends are that are being identified in the long range plan. And then finally, again, in the smart scale scorecards, providing information to yourselves and other decision makers to understand whether or not the project that's been evaluated has been designed in a manner to be resilient and address some of these impacts where that's applicable.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Donahue. Anyone else on the call who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Mr. Stone.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Chris Stone. I'm a licensed professional engineer in Virginia. I also serve on the Professional Engineers Licensure Board at DPOR, and I also am one of 3 non-legislative members on the Joint Subcommittee on Coastal Flooding, serving with Senator Lewis, who is our chair. As a member of the professional engineering community, and that includes the American Council for Engineering Companies and the American Society of Civil Engineers, the engineering community supports the substitute as presented. It adds resiliency to the 6-year improvement program, and it also asks that the Commissioner of Highways ensure resiliency is incorporated into the design of standards for new highway construction projects. So I'm asking that you report this out positively, and it has the support of the engineering community. Thank you,
Mr. Stone. Mr. Gottschalk, you wanted to weigh in?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Senators, my name is Alex Gottschalk. I am a budget analyst for the City of Virginia Beach. I just wanted to add that the City of Virginia Beach does strongly believe that it is in the public interest for resiliency to be both contemplated and considered as part of the Commonwealth's decisions to award Virginia's resources to surface transportation. We believe that to ensure the Commonwealth maintains a positive return on its investment in surface transportation and to promote the fiscal stewardship that Virginia is known for. We believe the incorporation of longevity of a project will preserve public accessibility to homes, schools, workplaces, and essential services throughout the 21st century. Therefore, we request the will of the committee to favorably report SB 1350. We thank Senator Lewis for his patronage. And I'd also like to note that the definition of resiliency in the original copy was fashioned based upon language that was in the Barrasso-Carper bipartisan Senate Environment Public Works Reauthorization Act. Although that didn't end up passing, we do envision that federal legislation will ultimately cover some definition of resiliency, and that will incorporate aspects that aren't just unique and exclusive to coastal issues and coastal Virginia issues, because that would reflect the issues that are pressing across the nation and across the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk. Anyone else care to speak in favor or opposed to the bill? I don't see any.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
may I,
Senator Lewis, would you like to wrap up?
Senator Newman, I knew he had to step out for a minute, but just to let him know, Deputy Secretary Donahue verified what I represented to you in my remarks about smart scale. So.
Okay. Thank you so much. Do we have a motion on the bill?
Mr. Chairman, sorry, but with this.
Senator Newman.
Senator Lewis, thank you. And I'm going to vote for this, but if we, between now and the floor, find out that it's going to interfere in any way with smart scale, I'd love to be able to work with you on that.
Oh, sure.
That's
Yes, sir.
just, it's so sacrosanct that we not go down that path, but I appreciate it. Thank you,
Yes, sir, Senator Newman, absolutely.
Is that a motion, Senator Newman? All right. You have a second? Second. Could you open the roll, please? We have a first and a second. And oh, excuse me. And so the motion would be Senator Spruill to report and refer to finance. Is that your motion? you have a second? Second. Okay, open the roll. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. I just did.
No, 0,
Thank
2
you.
abstentions.
Thank you, Senator Lewis. Senator Newman, you had a quick one for us before you need to.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, you may do it from here. Is that okay?
You sure can.
Mr. Chairman, if you turn your attention to Senate Bill 1277, Mr. Chairman, a few years ago, actually many years ago, I carried Senate Bill 1411. It basically allowed DMV to collect delinquent fines, costs, forfeitures, penalties, and court restitution. Mr. Chairman, it gave them the authorization to do it. They've not done it, and that's okay. But it does also require the reporting, even if they don't do it. What this bill will do, just eliminate the need to report on something that is not being done. That's it.
That sounds like a great idea, Senator Newman. Any questions from the committee? Anyone in the virtual audience who want to weigh in either in favor or opposed to Senator Newman's bill? If not, we have a motion.
Move to report.
Move to report. We have a second. We have a motion to report and a second. Clerk, would you open the roll?
Ayes 14, no 0.
Ayes 14, no 0. The bill reports. Thank you, Senator Newman. Next up, let's see here. I think Senator Pavola had to step away.
Mr. Chairman, I can take on 1253.
1253. And that's Senator McPike.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to do it from your seat?
If that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman?
It is.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So this is one of the JLARC recommendations that after they took a review this past year of economic development incentives, what this bill does is requires the Secretary of Transportation and Secretary of Commerce and Trade to develop guidelines for the use of the funds and access roads for economic development sites pursuant to the section, and require consideration of the number of jobs created by the project, as well as the capital investment by the private sector and the site and relative criteria for economic development. And I believe Ellen with JLARC is also on the line.
Okay. Would you like to speak to Senator McPike's bill, Ms. Miller?
Sure. Thank you, Senator Pike, Mr. Chairman. Again, Ellen Miller with JLARC. Basically, this bill would implement one of the recommendations from our recent report in which we focus specifically on infrastructure and regional incentives. This particular program was one of the ones that we evaluated. And what we found is that the program is estimated to generate a relatively low economic benefit relative to other programs. And the main reason is because the eligibility criteria is not as well defined as other programs. It only requires projects to meet basic employer criteria, and that's basically just a manufacturer, a distribution center, a research and development type facility. However, other programs also have minimum job creation and capital investment requirements. So basically, our recommendation and this bill is essentially trying to better align this program with other programs that Virginia has specifically to promote economic development, ultimately with the goal of increasing the economic benefit of the program.
Thank you so much for that. It's very helpful. Anyone on the committee have any questions for the patron? Anyone else in the virtual world who would like to comment on the bill either favorably or unfavorably? Do we have a motion on the bill? Move to report. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Could you open the roll?
Ayes 14, no 0.
Ayes 14, no 0. The bill reports. Thank you very much. Next up, we have, could we just deal with a couple of housekeeping things here real quick? Senator Peake, I believe you had a motion on your bill.
I was going to let somebody else
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was going to explain my bill and let somebody else make the motion, if that would be okay.
Okay.
Senate Bill 1139. Yeah. This is, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, this is a bill out of my own head, which is why it's received very little support. But in Buckingham, it was not requested by anybody. In Buckingham, there have been 2 accidents with horse-drawn buggies. We have a Mennonite or Amish population that's been growing in Buckingham and Cumberland. And in 2019, her buggy was hit by a car, and she was killed. And then last year, a buggy was pulling a wagon, and it was hit by a truck, and 14 out of the 15 people in that buggy were injured. And I'd had someone several years back in Buckingham tell me they were concerned about the horse-drawn carriages on the roads, and they were afraid that something was going to happen. And something has. And what we did, my legislative team, we looked and we went to Pennsylvania, and this bill is pretty much a draft of what they do in Pennsylvania, where they have probably the largest Amish horse buggy population. But since we have introduced this bill, I have received not one single contact in support of the bill, but a lot of contact against the bill. And so there you have it.
Well, I think your intent is admirable, Senator Peake. Senator Obenshain?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to help Senator Peake. I represent an area of Virginia that probably does have the largest Old Order Mennonite population there is, and we are no strangers to tragic accidents, and it's truly heartbreaking when they occur. And I mean, it really devastates the community inside and outside of the church. This piece of legislation, I think, requires, I certainly understand where the senator's coming from, appreciate his heart for the safety of these citizens of Virginia. This bill creates some unintended hardships, and accordingly, it would be my request that the bill be passed by indefinitely, and I don't know whether there is an opportunity for study of this issue, or is there another disposition that would be less troublesome?
Mr. Chairman, I believe
Senator
someone had indicated sending a letter to DMV, and so it might be
That
passed
was what
by
I was going to
indefinitely
suggest.
with a letter to DMV, just so it's on DMV's radar.
That is a wonderful suggestion, and I would. Was that a motion, Senator Obenshain?
That is a motion, and I think it would be great for DMV to study this because everybody wants to enhance safety for this population.
Second that.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay. The motion is to pass the bill by indefinitely, with a letter to DMV. Senator Peake, Senator Obenshain, who would like to write that letter for the chair's edification?
I'd be happy to work up a draft for the chair.
Thank you, Senator Obenshain. And so we will get a letter to the Commissioner of DMV to study this issue. They do a great job at these kinds of studies. So with that, could you open the rolls? The motion is to PBI.
Yeah, you got me. Good, thank you.
Ayes 14, no zero.
Ayes 14, no zero. The bill is PBI'd with a letter to the Commissioner to study the issue and come up with some improved safety standards for the horse-drawn vehicles.
Mr.
Next,
Chairman,
we have, can I also, Senator Spruill, for his Senate Bill 1386, would like to strike the bill. Do we have a motion? And we have a second?
Second.
Second. So could you open the roll, strike the bill? Thank you, Senator Spruill. You're a hero.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
May I do the same thing to Senate Bill 1364?
Well, if you insist.
I do.
Senate Bill 1364, the motion is to strike. Do we have a second? Okay, the motion is to strike Senate Bill 1364. Open the roll. All right, we're moving now. Thank you so much. 1386. All right, we have Senator Suderline. Is Senator Suderline here?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I would ask that the bill go by for the week.
Senator Suderline moves that without objection, Senator Suderline's bill number 1160 will go by for the week. Let's see, we have next Senator DeSteffe.
He's in finance, Mr. Chairman.
He's in finance? Yes. Okay, we'll see if is he going to be?
He should be coming back shortly.
He should be coming back? Okay. Senator Reeves would also like to have his bill stricken. Can I have a motion? Senate Bill 1347, excuse me. We have a motion and a second to strike Senate Bill 1347. Could you open the roll? All in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Dude, saving all the good stuff for last here. And Senator Pillion, is he available, or is he in? I'm sorry, Senator Overchain? Yeah, I don't believe Senator Pillion has the necessary signatures. Do we have? What would be an appropriate motion? Ms. Wallmeyer, what would be an appropriate motion here to deal with this issue where they don't have the appropriate number of signatures?
Mr. Chairman, typically committees don't hear the bills that don't have they don't docket them if they don't have the requisite number of signatures. This bill as introduced would eliminate the signature requirement, so there's a little bit of a loophole there.
Okay. Chairman. My first pocket veto. Yes, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. And I have not talked to Senator Pillion about this, but we stopped doing this a good while back, which, we have to have 500 up front before they'll put it out there. Okay, now this bill actually calls for that requirement to go away. But we have a U.S. Navy license plate we've been trying to get done for 2 years. So, do we really want to change the policy?
Nothing to hear then in this case. So I have a Senator DeSteffe. You are back. You ready to proceed on Senate Bill 1308?
I am, Mr. Chairman, if I may, members of the committee. Senate Bill 1308 fixes the problem that we created with the passage of Senate Bill 5029 in the 2020 special session. While I opposed Senate Bill 5029, the intent was to prevent law enforcement from stopping citizens perceived petty offenses, which include pedestrians in the roadway and jaywalking. What the bill also did, however, was prevent police from being able to take action when an individual maliciously or intentionally obstructs traffic. If you do not pass this bill, it'll be illegal for someone who intentionally stops traffic. However, the police will not be able to take any actions unless there's another actionable offense. So without this bill, if somebody stands in the middle of Route 50 or Leesburg Pike or Route 1 or any major street or road that's used as a commuter route, and they're doing it intentionally to maliciously stop traffic, delaying thousands of people going to or from work, even though the police are contacted, they're not going to be able to remove or touch or get involved with removing that individual because of what we had passed under Senate Bill 5029. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, no person should be allowed to obstruct or prevent the free passage of another. This bill will enable law enforcement to take action and remove that person from the roadway if necessary. It does not apply to permitted events. Permitted events have absolutely nothing to do with this. And it's not somebody who trips off the sidewalk
This is for somebody who maliciously intends to block traffic to cause delay and intentionally obstructs traffic. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you. Question for the patron. Do we have examples that you could give us where this has taken place and how it should be a crime? I'm not seeing. I feel like this could be very difficult for a police officer to assess if somebody's being malicious or not. I feel like that's not really very clear. Thank you.
Listen, Mr. Chairman, Senator Boysko, if I may, a good example is down where we live, I-264, the interstate, drops into Pacific Avenue and Atlantic Avenue. We had individuals and have individuals who will walk in the middle of Pacific Avenue or Atlantic Avenue intentionally obstructing traffic. Well, after May of this year, police were unable to go up to the individual and tell them move on or remove the individuals from obstructing traffic. And when you have 4 lanes dump into 2 lanes in either direction, that runs into a problem because now you're obstructing people from getting home at night. In Norfolk, there were similar situations, and here in Richmond, there were similar situations where folks intentionally, maliciously walked in the middle of the road to obstruct traffic. It had nothing to do with protests. It was single individuals trying to just delay traffic maliciously of their own fruition.
Question for me, Senator DeSteph. Suppose someone, solo person, has got a sign in protest of something, attempting to exercise their First Amendment right and what have you, and they're protesting, but they're doing it in the street. Would that, what kind of a nuance would that put on this situation?
Again, I'm not an attorney on this, but I believe that as long as they're not maliciously interfering with orderly passage of vehicles, then they're okay. If they're maliciously or intentionally interfering with orderly passage of vehicles, then that's already a crime. So this is already a crime today. What we've done, though, is we've said to the police officers when we change the code that you can't, even though they're obstructing traffic, you can't have them removed or remove them or move them on unless there's a secondary offense. So it can't be the primary offense. What this does is goes back to saying, hey, if this is being done to maliciously or intentionally interfere with orderly passage of vehicles, then it's still, I mean, it's a violation of the section, which it has been, but then the police officers can actually remove the individuals from blocking, intentionally or maliciously blocking traffic.
Okay. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, another
Senator
question.
Boysko.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot understand how anyone can assess maliciously stepping into the traffic. I don't understand how you would interpret that, how it would be assessed. I feel it's very unclear. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sherville?
This is Mick Pike.
Pike.
Thank you. Just a question to the patron. I mean, wouldn't it be true that, like in the instance that you're bringing up, say there's multiple people that were in a street and say, protesting, and it created a public safety hazard, could not the local police declare an unlawful assembly due to public safety reasons and therefore detain or arrest individuals as might be needed?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Pike, it's my understanding that today, unless there's a secondary offense, the police officers cannot remove them from the street. If it's a permitted event, again, this doesn't apply. If they're maliciously doing it and it's permitted, if it's permitted, then they're allowed to walk down the street, block traffic, do whatever they want. If it's not permitted and they're doing it today, it's against the law, but the police can't do anything about it. So what this attempts to do is says, hey, this can be a primary offense, and you can tell them to please move to the side of the road. You can approach them and ask them to be on their way, to stand on the sidewalk while you're holding your picketing sign. The law already states that you cannot intentionally interfere with the passage of vehicles. What this does is says now it's okay for the police officers to go up to the individual, approach the individual as a primary offense, and tell them, please move on your way.
Okay. Senator Steph, can I turn it over to, for just a moment, to the state police to see what their opinion is of this bill? Yeah, Ron, you there?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Ron Maxey, Virginia State Police. And I believe it was to Senator Bosco's position on that or question. In current law, as Senator DeSteph stated, the current law does have the language of when crossing highways, pedestrians shall not carelessly or maliciously interfere. So the malicious intent would be on law enforcement officer attempting to make that encounter and to make that arrest in charge. So that's where the weight would be laid there. But it does currently occur, or it is currently in the code itself. It appears they've added a subsection here and just cleaned some language up, struck it from one section, but I'll leave that up to Lisa if she'd like to comment. But again, just for clarification on the unlawful assembly declaration, that would not apply if it was a single person that walked out onto, say, for the example that was used, onto Interstate 264. If I recall the numbers, I believe it's got to be 2 or more in order for it to be an unlawful assembly. But if it was a single person that was intentionally blocking traffic, the unlawful assembly would not apply in that situation.
All right, thank you. Ms. Wallmeyer, could you care to comment on the language issue here?
Yes, sir. So what was just noted is exactly right. It's currently law to say you can't carelessly or maliciously interfere. This draft actually turns this existing code section into 2 different violations. Carelessly interfering with traffic would still, I think, just be a traffic violation, and maliciously or intentionally would be a class 1 misdemeanor. So in drafting this, sort of the situation in my mind was if you decided to jaywalk and you tripped while you were running across the road and ended up blocking traffic, maybe that's careless, but it wasn't malicious, versus if you go stand in the middle of the road and purposely don't move so that cars are backed up in front of you and you're showing some intent to stop traffic, that's where the misdemeanor would kick in.
Who we have?
Senator Sproul.
Senator Sproul.
Mr. Chairman, to the committee, I think all this bill is intention doing and trying to keep people out of the street, especially Virginia Beach. We're trying to tell black people don't go down Virginia Beach in the summertime. This is just another excuse. During the summertime, the sidewalks are not that wide. Sometimes the people walk in the street to get around to get back to the sidewalks where they want to go at. This is just another attempt just to lock people up. So I'm hoping that you vote against this bill.
Thank you, Senator Sproul. Other comments from the committee? Operate on a motion?
Move to PBI.
Yeah, I second that.
Have a second? We have a motion to PBI the bill and a second. Could you open the roll?
Oh, wait a minute. I made a mistake.
You want, Barbara?
Yes, I want a PBI, and I voted no.
Oh, excuse me. I did too. Excuse me. There we go.
Okay, I just revoked my proxy.
Okay.
Ayes 10, noes 3.
Ayes 10, no 3. The bill is PBI'd. Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senate Bill 1098.
Yes, am I the last one?
I've got one to go after this. It's just a simple.
Mine is very simple. It's a one-line change. If you look at line 17 and line 18, what my bill does is it says any owner of an unmanned aircraft shall not be required to register the aircraft. The Department of Transportation is not requiring this now. They really don't desire to do, to start registering unmanned aircraft. So we're merely putting into law current practice.
Senator Favola, we're talking about drones here, I suppose.
We are talking about drones. If you look at 19.2-60.1, yeah, we're talking about drones.
So if somebody has a drone the size of an F-16, they wouldn't have to register it?
They don't have to register it in the state. They'd have to register it with the federal government.
Okay.
The FAA has a registration list.
Okay.
So,
other questions from the committee?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, there is a requirement that these vehicles of a certain size or larger have to be registered with the FAA. But, you know, I don't think there should be a double requirement.
there's not a what? I'm sorry.
Okay, seems to be a simple request. Do we have anyone in the...
Mr. Chairman, Surville.
Senator Surville.
I don't know if anybody else owns a drone, but I do. And mine's not very big, but my recollection is that yet I think I have to register mine, even though it's not, I mean, it fits in my hand. I mean, it's like a pound or something.
You would have to register with the FAA.
I know I do. So, Mr. Chairman, my point is I think you said something about a drone the size of an F-16. We're not talking about that. We're talking about things that everyday people own. And so there are little tiny ones, I know, like really tiny ones that you don't have to register. And is your intent to try to require registration of those little teeny tiny ones?
My intent is to not register. Not. No registration. You should be very happy, Senator Surville.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, unless there's anybody in the queue opposed to it, my inclination is to move to report the bill.
Second. In the queue, who is opposed to the bill?
I'm unaware of anybody in the queue unopposed. David Skiles might be chomping at the bits to tell you how much he wants you to vote for it, but I think he'll accept a vote.
David, raise your hand if you want us to vote positively on this measure.
Mr. Chairman, that would be the best thing that happened to me all day.
All right, there you go. So we have a motion on the bill? Do you have a second? We have a motion and a second to report the bill. All in favor vote aye, opposed nay. I got you, Barbara.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Ayes 14, no 0. And we have saved the best for last, which is my bill, which is Senate Bill 1136. And what this bill does, all active registrations issued prior to July 1, 2021, pursuant to Chapter 776 of the Acts of Assembly of 2010 shall remain valid and may be renewed pursuant to the provisions of the Act. Nothing herein shall be construed to be reauthorization of such special license plates. The annual fee for renewal shall be $25 in addition to the prescribed fee for state license plates. For each such $25 fee, $15 shall be paid into the state treasury and credited to a special non-reverting fund known as the Community Nutrition Fund, established within the Department of Accounts. These funds shall be paid annually to the Virginia Department of Health, Division of Community Nutrition. In addition, all revenue previously collected under Chapter 776 of the Acts of Assembly of 2010 that remains unshared shall be dispensed to the Virginia Department of Health, Division of Community Nutrition. It's a cleanup bill on
Mr. Chairman,
license plates. Yes.
Two quick questions. Number one is it doesn't increase the fee, correct?
That appears to be correct.
And second is, my understanding is it's a cleanup to try and unify the process by which people apply for specialty plates?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ballmeyer.
What you actually just read was a proposed technical amendment to your bill, if you would like to offer the amendment.
So moved.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't realize it was an amendment. Thank you.
And
all
so
all in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Commissioner Holcomb, if you would.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator DeStaff?
Mr. Chairman, the way I read this, and maybe I'm missing something, the other thing this does is where today, for certain types of collectible vehicles, you can have a bumper that's roughly 9 inches off the ground. This repeals that and says that your bumper has to be a minimum of 14 inches off the ground to 22 inches.
I'm going to Lisa.
Mr. Chairman, what your bill actually does is there are several special license plates that have been issued that have not been reaching, have had very low sales. And so there's a provision in the law that allows for these to be reviewed and then repealed. And so all this bill simply does is repeal the authorization for the issuance of special plates that have a low rate. And some of the enactments on the end are saying if you currently have one of those plates, it's still valid. Just technical cleanup of what happened. It's not taking anybody's plates away. It's just not issuing them anymore.
Move to report.
Commissioner Holcomb. Rick, are you there? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Lisa's right. What happens is we used to have every so often a bill introduced that would just clean up plates that have fallen below the 200 limit. To bring out the point that Senator Cosgrove brought up earlier, there are 12 plates out there, some of which have not sold one plate. There are others that have 1, 2, 7. 10 of the 12 plates that never reached their limit were plates that had the 450 removed beforehand. So all this is doing, because code already says if a plate falls below 200, we have to stop selling those. But anyone who currently has them can continue to renew. What we're asking is just go ahead and remove the authorization since we can't, by code, sell any new ones of those plates. So that's all you're doing, Mr. Chairman, is cleaning up. We haven't cleaned up the code for a decade, so that's why we've gotten up to 12 plates.
Thank you, Commissioner Holcomb.
Move to
Okay,
report.
do we have a second? Moved and second to report the bill
As amended.
as amended. Excuse me.
Ayes 10, noes 3.
Ayes. Excuse me. Ayes.
Noes 3.
Ayes 10. Excuse me. Ayes 10, no 3. The bill reports. We'll have a short meeting next week to clean up some of the things that were held over. Thank you, everyone, for being here. If there's anything else for the committee, the committee shall rise.